Hey friends. So, had this kind of interesting insight show up this morning. I was sitting in meditation, and I've noticed, you know, my meditation practice, I try to be real regular. I I put in a pretty good effort as far as like getting up and being on the cushion after my physical routine. But it's easy to it's easy for like for example, last week, a couple days, Annalise, my daughter, woke up at 5 a.m. So even though had been up since 4:30, that I wasn't to my meditation routine yet. And that happened a couple days in a row. She wasn't feeling well, had a little tummy bug thing for a day or two, and seems to be over it now, thank God. But what that meant was I would get to the end of my day and realize, oh no, I haven't done my meditation practice. And I funny enough, I noticed that most prominently when I come back to my meditation practice. So like I will come back and be on the cushion, and I'll give myself, I don't know, 30-minute, 40-minute meditation, whatever I have time for. And I'll feel, because when I'm really consistent, when I'm really just day in, day out, unbroken, there's a certain depth, there's a certain dimension of stillness that's just there. Sit down, start meditating, boom. And it's like stillness just enters. I enter stillness. I'm just there. Give me a few days of missing, or I'll start 5 minutes in, Annalise wakes up. That dimension starts to kind of wane, and it takes me longer to find it when I sit down. Part of the skill that I'm learning is to actually identify when that's happening. And so when I sit down and I can tell that I'm not really connected to stillness as deeply as I can be, to notice that and to kind of lean in and kind of find, because stillness is something that we can access in an instant. Doesn't take hours and hours of sitting to access it. But it does take a pretty powerful commitment. It does take us really making it a priority, really making it important. Because if we think that, oh, I can just show up and in 5 minutes I'll find stillness, more often than not, that's not what happens. We will actually sort of like not really leave the mind stuff behind, and we'll kind of come and maybe we have a little glimpse, or maybe we give ourselves a hit of affirmation that we sat down, but it's not the same as really entering that other dimension. And what was showing up this morning for me was how vital that dimension is. Because, one of the things I talked more about this than anything else on this post, the idea of dissolving our mental patterns, and to the extent that we want to, reprogramming our mental patterns, giving ourselves new patterns to replace the patterns that aren't serving us, that aren't working for us, etc. But that dissolving process, if we're sitting and we're seeing a pattern, the pattern can really only be dissolved by stillness, by something that transcends the mind. And it's interesting to talk about this, because it's like I can talk about this, but it's not really going to impact, and not really going to have much impact unless you've had the experience, unless you have had the experience of sitting in that place of a dimension that is genuinely separate from the mind and beyond the mind. It's the space, the kind of container for all experience, including the mind. Then it becomes very evident that when we have a mental pattern or something that we want to, and this can be like any mental pattern, it can be anxiety, it can be stress, or it can be something, it doesn't have to be negative necessarily, it can be something positive or something genuinely moderately effective that maybe we don't even want to dissolve, or we want to dissolve it, but it's really as part of a kind of healthy evolution. It's not like it's a problem. Any pattern can only be dissolved by that stillness. And if we don't have access to that stillness, then we can't truly, then we're not really escaping from the mind. Then what we're doing is we're taking one mental pattern and we're attaching to a concept of stillness or oneness or, I don't know, God, whatever. But it's another mental concept. It's not an actual experience of that presence. And that's a kind of awkward place to be, because now we kind of think we've got it, but we don't. It's like we think that we have access to something that's beyond the mind, but actually, and I think the best identifier that I've come up with to sort of know the difference, because God knows my mind spins these stories. My mind creates a concept. Even when I have a genuine experience of stillness, as if that experience comes to an end and I move more back into my mental, emotional, psychological realm, my psychodrama, I reflect upon the experience of stillness in the form of a concept about it. My mind has a story now about what stillness means to me. And that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as actual stillness. So now when I'm trying to dissolve this mental concept, or this pattern, let's say I have a problematic pattern, something I'm trying to work with. Now I've got this mental pattern and I'm trying to just replace it with this other one. And I keep trying to, and that's very unlikely to work. That's most likely just going to create a kind of like cognitive dissonance, internal friction, because it's like my mind has reasons for wanting to be attached to this, and it has reasons for wanting to be attached to this. And I've decided that these attachments are better. They're the more holistic, whatever, enlightened ones. But they're just still concepts. It has nothing to do with actual enlightenment or actual stillness. It's just my mind's ideas about enlightenment and stillness. So now I'm taking this pattern that I have like kind of rooted emotional attachment to, probably, otherwise it wouldn't be a pattern. And I'm trying to take this pattern and go, yeah, but you're the one I want to be having, so let's put you down here, and now I'm going to make you be my actual, you're going to be my behavior. You're going to be the thoughts I think, or whatever. Yeesh. It's no good. It's no good. There's no real dissolving happening. And so the pattern that is trying to replace, the one that we're trying to get rid of, or they're trying to dissolve, is being imposed. it's being kind of forced. And that's just all we end up with is a kind of cacophony of mental friction. There's no just, because the thing is, patterns, when we're in a place of real stillness, the patterns can continue. And it's a very different feeling than taking a pattern and saying, no, I don't like you, you're bad, you're not what I want, and getting rid of it. It's much more like having a pattern that we are living, and all of a sudden we step back, and now that pattern lives in an aquarium, and we're just looking at it through the walls of the aquarium. It's a contained body, and the pattern's kind of happening there, and we go, oh, look at that. Huh. Wow. Whoa. I see how that works. This thing over here attracts this, and then that creates a reaction, then that has a ripple effect. It's like we get to just observe the pattern, and we don't dissolve the pattern. We, the ego, cannot possibly dissolve the pattern. We, the ego, are made of the same thing as the pattern. The only thing that can dissolve the pattern is the space that we exist in. And I think, the consciousness, the awareness of the kind of cause and effect nature of it. And again, I think it's one of the things that has brought this lesson around for me, or sort of bringing it, brought it up in my awareness, is the fact that if I dip in and out of consistent meditative practice, I see both ways that I see both ways of working. The actual way, the way in which stillness truly just pervades everything, and very naturally restrictive patterns, it's like, because I'm no longer fueling them, they just kind of like peter out. They just kind of, it's not even that they dissolve, they just run out of energy. And then they kind of do dissolve. They stop being, it's like if you had a bunch of little electric devices, and all of a sudden they just all ran out of power and just like fell to the bottom of the aquarium, because they're not getting any more, they don't have any more electricity, they don't have any more power to run on, so the pattern stops. Versus seeing this pattern and then having this other pattern and being like, but I like this pattern better, so I'm going to impose this one on this one, and then like I'm pouring fuel at both of them, and it becomes like a buzzing beehive of my own kind of psychodrama and preferences vying for supremacy in my mind. I mean, you can imagine, like, it sounds insane, doesn't it? It is insane. That's insanity. So I think, again, this experience that I'm having, and the kind of like juxtaposition of these two ways, is really, more than anything, and it's an invitation to myself to be on the lookout, and to just really kind of, because again, we can come to stillness in an instant. I think any meditation teacher would recommend, a couple hours a day, ideally, but certainly whatever you can spare. But in the moment that we see, oh, look at me, I'm just taking one pattern and trying to impose it on another one, we actually do have the capacity to say, wait, I see that. Let's not do that. Let's just step back and look at both these patterns. Let's just watch them. See what happens when they run out of gas. See what's left when they run out of gas. And I think my recent kind of like coming in and out of focus on this is an invitation for me to really be rigorous about identifying what's happening when, and stay on the path, stay on the plan. You know, that's what I'm getting from it. So yeah. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate you. All the love in the world. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.